The village was alive with excitement that morning. Birds chirped in the crisp, fresh air, and the scent of blooming flowers mixed with the earthy aroma of the mountain paths. Children ran through the cobblestone streets, their laughter echoing off the wooden houses, while women carried baskets of bread, fresh fruits, and colorful flowers for the wedding celebration. Everyone seemed to move a little faster than usual, smiling and greeting one another with a sense of anticipation that was impossible to miss. Today was no ordinary day. Today, the villagers were preparing to celebrate the union of two young people whose love had grown quietly over the years. The bride was expected to arrive soon, and the entire village had gathered at the edge of the mountain trail to welcome her. As the sun climbed higher, its golden rays illuminating the green valleys below, a nervous energy spread through the crowd. Villagers whispered to one another about how perfectly everything was going. The decorations were set, the flowers arranged in neat, fragrant bunches, and the music instruments rested in the hands of the local players, ready to fill the air with joyful tunes. The air was so still at one moment that it felt as if nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for the bride's arrival. Suddenly, a soft murmur ran through the crowd. Eyes widened and heads turned toward the narrow, winding trail that led down from the forested slopes above. A small carriage, decorated with white ribbons and bright flowers, should have appeared at that moment, carrying the bride elegantly toward the village. But what emerged instead was far from expected. A young woman, her dress slightly torn at the hem and dirt smudged along the edges, stumbled into view. One of her shoes was missing, leaving her bare foot scuffed from the rocky path. She paused, breathing heavily, trying to steady herself, and for a moment, it seemed as though the entire village collectively held its breath. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some villagers whispered anxiously, pointing at her uneven appearance. Others shook their heads in disbelief, murmuring about the misfortune of the morning. The bride, however, showed no sign of panic in her eyes, only determination. She had traveled a long way to reach this moment, and nothing, neither the broken carriage nor the treacherous mountain trail, would stop her from reaching the village and the wedding that awaited. Her face was flushed from exertion, and her dark hair clung in damp strands to her forehead. Yet there was a spark in her eyes, a quiet strength that seemed to shine brighter than any decoration in the village square. The children stopped their play and watched in wide-eyed curiosity. They had never seen the bride arrive like this before. Their usual imagination of a perfect princess stepping gracefully from a carriage had been replaced by the sight of a real person, struggling but unwavering. Some of the older villagers whispered words of encouragement, calling out from a distance to offer help, while others simply stood in stunned silence. Everyone could feel that something extraordinary was happening, something that would be remembered for years. As she took careful steps along the uneven stones, she clutched the edges of her dress to prevent it from tearing further. Her remaining shoe pressed against the rocky surface, causing her discomfort with every step, yet she did not stop. Each movement was deliberate, a balance between caution and urgency. She glanced behind her toward the carriage, now broken and abandoned on the side of the trail, and for a brief moment, a shadow of worry crossed her face. The vehicle, which was meant to carry her effortlessly, had failed her when she needed it most. But she did not allow the frustration to overwhelm her. Instead, she squared her shoulders and focused on the path ahead, determined to reach her destination no matter what. The villagers could see the effort she was putting in, and slowly, murmurs of admiration replaced the whispers of concern. "Look at her," one elder said quietly, his voice tinged with respect. "She will not let this mountain stop her." Another nodded, adding, "It takes more than a smooth path to reach the heart of a person like that." The bride's determination became an inspiration, even before she had reached them. People began to move aside, clearing her path and offering small gestures of support. Some held out a hand to help her balance, while others placed stones carefully to make the uneven trail slightly easier to navigate. The entire village seemed to act in quiet solidarity, recognizing the courage it took to continue despite the obstacles. She paused for a moment on a steep incline, leaning on a small wooden fence for support. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts, and sweat glistened on her forehead. Yet in her eyes, there was no defeat, only resilience. She looked down at the single shoe clinging stubbornly to her foot, then at the bare foot that had pressed against the rough terrain for so long. A small, rueful smile touched her lips, a mixture of humor and acknowledgement of the situation. Even in the midst of hardship, she found a way to hold on to her composure. It was a simple human gesture, yet it spoke volumes about her character. She was not just a bride today. She was a woman confronting life's challenges head-on, refusing to be diminished by circumstances. From the trees above, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the scent of pine and fresh soil. It seemed as though nature itself was observing her struggle and offering a quiet, encouraging presence. The sunlight danced across the trail, creating patches of warmth that touched her face and arms, giving her strength in small, subtle ways. Every step she took, though difficult, seemed to be supported by an unseen force, as if the mountain itself wanted her to succeed. She lifted her head and took another careful step, and with that motion the village's collective hope grew. People began to cheer softly, whispering words of encouragement. "You can do it. Almost there. Don't give up now." Her eyes met those of a few villagers who had climbed slightly higher to see her progress. They nodded in understanding, sharing silent solidarity with someone who was proving that courage was more important than perfection. The path, though challenging, was a test of willpower, and she was passing it with dignity and determination. With each step, she moved closer to the place where love, community, and celebration awaited her. And the anticipation of that moment kept her moving forward, one foot in front of the other. Then, from a distant part of the trail, a sound of footsteps echoed softly. It was not the usual rhythm of hurried villagers or playful children, but a steady, calm stride that suggested confidence and familiarity with the mountain paths. The bride looked up, curiosity mixing with relief, sensing that she would not have to face the remainder of the journey alone. In that instant, something changed in the atmosphere. The tension eased slightly, replaced by the hope that help had arrived. She straightened her back, preparing herself to continue, and for the first time since the beginning of her ordeal, she allowed herself a brief moment of anticipation and gratitude. The villagers, now more aware of the bride's struggle than ever, continued to watch in awe. They could see the way she balanced herself, how she navigated the treacherous stones and uneven ground, and how she remained calm despite exhaustion. Every small movement seemed magnified in the quiet morning air, and the impact of her determination was not lost on anyone. It was clear that this was not a simple arrival. It was a journey of courage, resilience, and quiet strength, and everyone present was witnessing a story that would be told for generations. And so, the bride continued forward, one careful step at a time, carrying the weight of the journey, the broken carriage, and the missing shoe with grace and determination. The village watched, hearts filled with admiration and curiosity, as the moment approached when her perseverance would meet help and guidance from an unexpected source. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating her path and highlighting her unwavering resolve, signaling that this wedding would be remembered not just for the ceremony, but for the remarkable arrival that had captured the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. The sound of footsteps grew louder along the mountain trail, a rhythmic, steady beat that cut through the nervous whispers of the villagers. From the shadows of the towering pine trees emerged a figure tall and confident, moving with the ease of someone who knew the mountain paths as well as the lines on his own hands. He wore a simple shirt and rugged trousers, his hair slightly wind-tossed, and a calm smile touched his face. His eyes, kind yet bright, took in the scene before him, the young bride, tired and slightly disheveled, balancing on the uneven rocks with only one shoe. The villagers instantly recognized him. He was the mountain man, a figure both familiar and respected in their community. Many had heard tales of his gentle nature, his quiet strength, and the way he always offered help to anyone in need. He was known not just for his skill navigating the rugged terrain, but for his patience, his calm voice, and the warmth in his gaze that seemed to put even the most nervous traveler at ease. Children often peeked from behind doors, watching him pass with awe, while adults respected his presence, knowing he carried a quiet wisdom that only life in the mountains could teach. He slowed his pace slightly as he approached the bride. There was no rush in his movements, only a natural grace born from years of walking paths that were treacherous and steep. He observed her carefully, noting the weariness in her eyes, the dirt on her dress, and the single shoe that clung stubbornly to her foot. Yet there was no pity in his expression, only understanding. He had seen many travelers struggle over these paths, and he knew that a kind word, a steady hand, and a willingness to help could make all the difference. "You look tired," he said softly, his voice carrying across the trail without startling her. "The path is not easy, but I can help you. I'll carry you the rest of the way." His words were simple, yet they held the weight of reassurance, as if every syllable was a promise that she would not have to face the remainder of the journey alone. The bride looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. For a brief moment, she hesitated, unsure if this stranger could truly help her, or if she should continue alone as she had been doing. But the sincerity in his gaze, the calm confidence in his posture, and the genuine warmth in his voice quickly melted away her doubt. She nodded, a small, grateful smile forming on her lips, and allowed herself to trust him. The villagers around them began to murmur in approval, sensing that this was the moment when the bride's struggle would turn into a story of hope and human kindness. Without another word, the mountain man knelt slightly, offering his strong arms. The bride stepped forward carefully, allowing herself to be lifted gently into his embrace. His movements were practiced yet tender, balancing her weight effortlessly and ensuring that she felt secure. The villagers watched in awe as he adjusted his hold, making certain she would not slip or stumble, all while maintaining a calm smile. The scene was simple, yet it radiated a quiet magic, a combination of strength, compassion, and human connection that seemed to lift the tension in the morning air. As they began to move, the mountain man's steps were steady and sure. Each footfall was deliberate, navigating the rocky path with ease. The bride felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time since the journey began, she could focus on the beauty around her instead of worrying about every precarious step. The towering trees swayed gently in the breeze, the sunlight filtering through the leaves in golden patterns, and the distant sound of a waterfall added a peaceful rhythm to their movement. The path, which had seemed daunting moments before, now felt manageable, as if it were welcoming her with open arms. Along the way, the mountain man spoke in soft, encouraging tones. "This part of the path can be tricky," he said, pointing to a narrow section lined with loose stones. "But we'll take it slowly. You just hold on, and I'll make sure we get through safely." His words were more than instructions. They were a comfort, a reminder that she did not have to face this challenge alone. The bride listened carefully, feeling a sense of trust growing between them. She had expected struggle and discomfort, Yet the presence of someone who genuinely cared turned every step into an experience she could embrace rather than endure. The villagers followed at a distance, their eyes filled with admiration and curiosity. Some whispered to each other about the mountain man's strength, others about the bride's courage, and a few simply marveled at the grace with which they moved together. Children ran alongside the trail, their small hands waving in greeting, and the bride smiled down at them, feeling a connection not just to the helper in her arms, but to the entire community. It was as if the journey had become a shared experience, uniting strangers and friends alike in a quiet celebration of perseverance and kindness. As they continued upward, the mountain man pointed out small details of the forest around them, the way certain trees grew close together to form natural bridges, how wildflowers peeked through the cracks in the rocks, and where birds often nested among the branches. His voice carried knowledge and respect for the land, and the bride listened with fascination. The beauty of the surroundings, which she might have overlooked if traveling alone, now became a source of wonder and joy. She realized that sometimes help did not just make the journey easier, it made it richer, allowing her to notice the small miracles that had been hidden in plain sight. At one point, they reached a particularly steep section of the trail, where loose stones threatened to shift underfoot. The mountain man paused, adjusting his hold and shifting his weight carefully. "Almost there," he said quietly, a reassuring smile on his face. "We'll take this slowly, together." His calm voice and deliberate movements made her feel safe, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to relax completely. The fear that had been gnawing at her melted away, replaced by trust and a growing admiration for the man who carried her with such care. The journey was not without small moments of challenge. Occasionally, a stone slipped, or a branch brushed against her dress. But each time the mountain man adjusted smoothly, turning potential discomfort into a moment of ease. His presence was steady, like the roots of the mountains themselves, solid, unshakable, and dependable. The bride felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond words, a recognition that some acts of kindness were more powerful than any grand gesture. It was quiet, yet it resonated deeply within her, leaving an imprint that she knew would remain long after the wedding day. As they continued, a bond began to form, not through words, but through shared experience. The mountain man did not rush, and she did not feel the need to hurry. Their movements were synchronized, their breathing matching the rhythm of the trail. The villagers, now watching more attentively, began to sense this connection. They could see that it was not just a physical act of carrying someone, but a moment of mutual respect and understanding, a silent communication that spoke of trust, courage, and humanity. Time seemed to stretch and compress as they moved through the forested path. Sunlight shifted, casting dancing patterns on their journey, while the distant murmur of the village below reminded them that the celebration awaited. The mountain man's smile never wavered, and the bride's initial anxiety had transformed into quiet appreciation. Every step became a story in itself, every glance a part of an unspoken dialogue between two people whose lives were briefly intertwined by circumstance, yet destined to leave a lasting impression. By the time they reached a small plateau overlooking the valley, the villagers below could see the determination on the bride's face and the ease in the mountain man's movements. The scene was simple yet extraordinary. A young woman, exhausted but resolute, being carried through the mountains by someone who represented strength, kindness, and unwavering support. Whispers of admiration floated up from the village, carried by the wind, as if even nature itself acknowledged the significance of the moment. The mountain man paused for a moment on the plateau, setting the bride down carefully on a flat rock. She steadied herself, looking around at the breathtaking view. The village nestled in the valley below, the forest stretching endlessly in every direction, and the path they had just conquered winding like a silver ribbon. She felt a rush of emotion, relief, gratitude, and a growing sense of wonder at the unexpected kindness of a stranger who had turned a difficult journey into a memorable experience. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know how I would have managed without you." The mountain man smiled, his eyes reflecting warmth and humility. "You were brave," he replied. "I just helped a little. The courage was all yours." His words were simple, yet they carried profound meaning, highlighting the balance between self-reliance and the value of accepting help when offered. The villagers, now closer, began to cheer quietly, recognizing the symbolic moment. It was not just the arrival of a bride. It was a story of human connection, of resilience, and of the quiet heroism that exists in everyday life. Children clapped their hands, elders nodded in approval, and the air seemed to hum with a sense of shared joy and relief. The journey was far from over, but the mountain man had already left an indelible mark. Through his actions, the bride had learned that help could arrive when least expected, that trust could form in the briefest moments, and that a challenging path could be transformed into an experience of wonder and connection. The story of this morning would be remembered not just for the wedding that awaited, but for the mountain man who had appeared at the right moment, offering more than strength, offering care, respect, and a reminder of the goodness that exists in the world. The mountain man lifted the bride carefully once again, making sure that every movement was gentle yet steady. The rocks below were uneven, and the path ahead twisted and turned in ways that made it impossible for someone unfamiliar to navigate safely. But he moved with the grace of someone who had spent a lifetime in these mountains, every step measured and deliberate. The bride felt a mix of nervousness and relief. She was high above the village now, the air crisp and fresh, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and wildflowers that grew in abundance along the slopes. The wind whispered softly through the trees, brushing against her face and tangling her hair in playful strands. She held on to the mountain man's shoulders lightly, not because she feared slipping, but because the journey demanded balance, and the weight of the climb rested on both of them. As they moved forward, she began to notice the details she had overlooked earlier. The way sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the ground, or how a small bird flitted between branches as if guiding them along the safest path. The mountain, once intimidating, now felt alive with beauty and mystery, and her heart began to open to the moment in a way she had not expected. The mountain man spoke occasionally, his voice calm and rhythmic, blending with the sounds of the forest. "There is a little stream up ahead," he said. "It's shallow, but the rocks can be slippery. We'll take it slow." His words were practical, but also comforting, as if each instruction was meant to reassure her that every challenge could be met with care and patience. The bride listened, appreciating the gentle guidance, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to relax completely. She could feel her tension melting away, replaced by trust and a growing admiration for the man carrying her with such care. The villagers below watched as the two figures moved along the winding trail, some whispering among themselves, others simply holding their breath in admiration. It was clear that this was no ordinary rescue. The mountain man's steady presence and the bride's determination had transformed a difficult climb into a story of courage and human connection. Children clung to their parents' hands, imagining themselves on the trail, while the elders nodded knowingly, remembering their own experiences with the mountains and the rare kindness that could turn a moment of fear into one of hope. The path began to climb more steeply, and the mountain man adjusted his hold on the bride slightly. He moved slowly, deliberately placing each foot on the stones to ensure stability. The bride felt the strain in her arms and legs, but the mountain man's calm movements made her feel safe. She began to notice small details, the way he paused to check the footing, how he shifted his weight slightly when a loose stone threatened to wobble, and the quiet determination in his eyes. Each of these observations deepened her respect and trust, making her realize that strength was not just in physical ability, but in patience, care, and attention to detail. As they walked, the bride began to speak softly, sharing small observations about the mountain and the village below. "I never realized how beautiful it looked from here," she said. "The valley, the river, it's like a painting." The mountain man nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "The mountains have a way of showing their beauty to those who take the time to notice," he said. "Sometimes the hardest paths reveal the most remarkable views." His words felt almost like a lesson, gentle and unspoken, about life, resilience, and perspective. The bride thought about this as they continued their journey. She had been so focused on reaching the village that she had almost missed the wonder around her. The climb, though difficult, was teaching her something unexpected, that even challenges could hold moments of beauty and that help from others could turn struggle into a shared experience of discovery. She glanced up at the mountain man, realizing that he had not only carried her physically, but had also guided her into a new way of seeing the world around her. The trail led them past clusters of wildflowers, their bright colors a striking contrast against the muted tones of rocks and soil. The bride reached out, lightly touching a small blossom as they passed, and the mountain man glanced down, smiling quietly. "It's important to notice the small things," he said. "They often bring the most joy." She nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. In the midst of an exhausting climb, she had found moments of serenity, and the kindness of a stranger had made it possible. Halfway through the journey, they reached a narrow ridge that overlooked a sheer drop on one side. The bride's heart skipped a beat as she instinctively tightened her grip on his shoulders. The mountain man remained calm, his steady presence a balm to her sudden fear. "It's safe," he said softly. "I've walked this path many times. Just hold on, and we'll be fine." His confidence was infectious, and she found herself trusting completely, even in the face of the cliff's edge. Step by step, he guided her along the ridge, his careful movements ensuring that they remained secure. The climb continued, and with every step, the bride's admiration grew. She noticed how he balanced strength with gentleness, how he moved efficiently without rushing, and how he seemed to anticipate every challenge before it arose. It was a rhythm that spoke of experience, patience, and a deep understanding of the world around him. She realized that the journey was teaching her not just about the mountains, but about trust, humility, and the quiet power of someone who acts with care and integrity. As they moved higher, the air became cooler, carrying the fresh scent of pine and damp soil. The bride could feel her legs tiring, but the mountain man's steady pace allowed her to conserve energy. He occasionally spoke, pointing out landmarks, small animals, and patterns in the trees that indicated the safest route. His voice was soft and calm, but it carried a subtle energy that kept her alert and engaged. It was not just guidance, it was a form of storytelling, turning the climb into a lesson in observation, awareness, and appreciation for the world around her. At one point, a small squirrel darted across the path, pausing briefly to look at them before scampering away. The bride laughed softly, a sound of genuine joy that had been absent during the earlier struggle. "Even the animals seem to know we're on an important journey," she said. The mountain man chuckled lightly. "They notice things we don't," he said. "It's part of living close to the mountains. You learn to observe everything, even the smallest creature." His words reminded her that attention to detail could turn ordinary moments into something remarkable. The sun began to shift in the sky, casting longer shadows across the trail. The bride felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The path was demanding, but each step was a testament to her resilience and the quiet heroism of the man carrying her. She realized that the journey itself was becoming as meaningful as the destination. The mountain man, with his patient guidance, was teaching her the value of slowing down, noticing the world, and finding strength in unexpected places. As they neared the top of the mountain, the village came into view again, smaller now from the distance but still familiar. The bride's heart swelled with relief and anticipation. She could hear faint sounds of music and laughter carried up the wind, a reminder that celebration awaited her at the end of the trail. Yet she felt a sense of sadness that the journey would soon end, for it had become a shared experience, a moment of connection that she knew she would never forget. The mountain man paused on a smooth rock, letting her rest briefly. "Almost there," he said, his smile calm and reassuring. "One more stretch, and we'll be at the village." She nodded, catching her breath, feeling gratitude deeper than words could express. She realized that this journey had been about more than reaching the wedding. It had been about discovering courage, trust, and the kindness of someone willing to carry her, not just over rocks and uneven ground, but through fear and uncertainty. They continued, step by careful step, finally reaching a clearing where the trail leveled out. The bride looked down at the village, now fully visible, with its colorful rooftops and gathered villagers, cheering softly at her progress. The path that had seemed impossible hours ago had been conquered through patience, determination, and a remarkable act of care. She felt a sense of accomplishment mingled with gratitude, understanding that some challenges are made lighter when shared, and that human kindness can transform even the most difficult journey into a story worth remembering. Finally, the mountain man lowered her gently to the ground. She stood on her single shoe, balanced carefully, and turned to him with a radiant smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "I would never have made it without you." The mountain man's smile widened, calm and warm. "You carried yourself more than I did," he said softly. "I just helped along the way." His words were humble, yet full of meaning. Together, they had not only navigated the mountain trail, but had created a story of trust, resilience, and shared humanity that would linger long after the wedding bells rang. The village lay below them, small and lively, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun. From this height, the bride could see the colorful rooftops, the winding streets, and the gathering of people who had come to celebrate her wedding. The sounds of laughter, soft music, and cheerful voices carried up the mountain breeze, mixing with the gentle rustle of leaves and the occasional call of birds. Though the celebration awaited her, she was not thinking about the ceremony right now. Instead, her mind was focused on the journey she had just undertaken and the man who had carried her through it with such care. As they walked slowly along the final stretch of the trail, the bride began to notice the small details of his character, things she hadn't seen before. The mountain man moved with ease, but there was a quiet attentiveness in the way he scanned the path, making sure that every stone was stable and every step secure. He adjusted his pace to match hers, even though he could have walked faster, showing that he cared not just about reaching the village, but about how she felt along the way. His eyes held a calm warmth, a subtle kindness that seemed to reassure her even when words were not spoken. "You have been walking these paths for a long time, haven't you?" she asked softly, curiosity blending with admiration. The mountain man smiled. "Yes, since I was a child. I have learned to listen to the mountains, to respect them. They tell you what to do if you are willing to pay attention." His voice was steady and calm, yet it carried a quiet wisdom that made her feel safe. Every stone, every tree, every animal has a story. You just have to look closely enough. The bride listened, fascinated. She had grown up in the village, surrounded by these mountains, but she had never truly understood them the way he did. To her, they had always been obstacles, something to climb and pass quickly to reach the other side. But now, seeing them through his eyes, she realized that the mountains were alive with history, with life, with beauty. And she understood that the journey had been about more than reaching the village. It had been about noticing, appreciating, and learning. They moved along a narrow path where wildflowers bloomed in abundance, their bright colors vivid against the dark earth. The bride reached out to touch a delicate bloom, and he chuckled softly. "Careful," he said. "They are beautiful, but fragile, just like some moments in life. You have to handle them with care." She smiled, feeling the truth in his words. The journey had taught her that life was made up of these small, delicate moments, moments of trust, connection, and courage, and that noticing them made all the difference. As they continued, the bride began to feel a sense of calm she had not experienced in a long time. The fear, exhaustion, and worry that had plagued her since the morning were slowly melting away. The mountain man's presence was steady, comforting, and unassuming. There was no rush, no pressure, only a gentle guidance that allowed her to focus on each step, each breath, and each small discovery along the path. She began to feel a deep appreciation, not just for his help, but for the way he had turned what could have been a frightening ordeal into an experience of shared understanding. At one point, they reached a small clearing where the sunlight poured through the trees, illuminating the path in golden light. The bride paused, taking a deep breath and looking around. "It's beautiful," she whispered, almost to herself. "It is," the mountain man agreed. "Sometimes, when we are focused only on the destination, we miss the beauty along the way." His voice carried a gentle wisdom that made her reflect on her own life. She realized how often she had rushed through moments, worried about reaching the next step, and how little she had paused to notice the simple wonders around her. The journey with him had opened her eyes to a new way of seeing, appreciating, and experiencing life. The villagers below had followed them from a distance, watching silently and with growing admiration. They could see how effortlessly the mountain man guided her along the path, how attentive he was to her needs, and how she responded with trust and quiet joy. The scene was more than just a rescue. It was a lesson in patience, humility, and human connection. They whispered among themselves, marveling at the grace and kindness that could exist in such everyday moments, and they knew that this story would be told for years to come. As the path wound upward, the mountain man noticed a loose stone near the edge of the trail. He stopped briefly, shifting his weight to steady her and moving the stone to a safer position. "There," he said simply. "It's small, but it matters. One careless step can make a difference." The bride nodded, appreciating not only his attentiveness but the quiet message behind his action. Life was full of these small, important moments, and noticing them could prevent problems and create opportunities for care and connection. They walked in silence for a while, each step deliberate and calm. The bride felt a sense of peace settling over her. She had faced exhaustion, uncertainty, and fear earlier. But now, carried safely along the path by someone she trusted, she felt a growing confidence. She realized that courage was not just about facing obstacles alone, it was about recognizing when to accept help, when to trust, and when to move forward together. The mountain man's presence had shown her that strength could be found in unity, in quiet guidance, and in the simple act of caring for another person. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked after a moment, curiosity tinged with concern. He shook his head with a gentle smile. "The mountains tire you, yes, but they also give you energy. You learn to rest when you need to, and move when it matters. It's a balance. His words made her reflect on her own life, the balance between effort and patience, and how often she had rushed through challenges without appreciating the lessons they offered. The trail narrowed again, forcing them to move in single file. The bride's hand rested lightly on his arm for balance, and she noticed the steadiness of his movements, the care in each step, and the quiet reassurance in his presence. It was more than physical guidance. It was a sense of being protected, of being seen and understood in a way that went beyond words. She realized that sometimes the simplest acts of support could leave the deepest impressions, and she felt a quiet gratitude that went beyond expression. The sunlight shifted, casting long shadows across the trail, and the village below grew larger in view. The sounds of the celebration were more distinct now: music, laughter, and the excited chatter of friends and family waiting for her arrival. Yet, she felt no rush. Every step along the mountain path had been meaningful, and she wanted to savor these final moments before joining the festivities. The journey had transformed from a challenge into a shared story of trust, courage, and human connection, and she knew that these moments would remain with her long after the wedding was over. At a particularly scenic overlook, the mountain man paused again, letting her catch her breath and take in the view. The valley stretched out below them, rivers winding like silver threads, forests dense with life, and the village at the center, colorful and vibrant. The bride felt a surge of emotion, realizing that she had been given more than a safe passage. She had been shown a perspective, a new way to see the world and appreciate the journey itself. She smiled at the mountain man, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. "You make the mountains feel less frightening," she said softly. He smiled back, modest and calm. "They are only frightening if you face them alone. With someone to guide you, you see their beauty and strength." His words resonated deeply, and she felt a quiet sense of connection, not just to him, but to the world around her. The journey had become a shared experience, teaching lessons of patience, trust, and the extraordinary impact of simple kindness. As they approached the final stretch before the village, the bride felt a mix of excitement and reflection. The path had been challenging, yet every step had been meaningful. She had learned to notice beauty, appreciate care, and trust in someone else's guidance. The mountain man's quiet strength had transformed what could have been a stressful, exhausting journey into a memorable experience full of wonder and connection. The villagers, now closer, began to cheer softly, their excitement tempered by awe at what they had witnessed. The bride felt a deep sense of joy and anticipation. She knew that this wedding would be remembered not only for the celebration, but for the journey that had brought her here, carried by someone whose kindness and strength had touched her deeply. Finally, the trail leveled, and the village was in full view. She could hear the voices of friends and family calling her name, the music swelling and the air filled with warmth and celebration. The mountain man lowered her gently to the path, steadying her carefully, and she took a moment to appreciate the journey they had shared. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking up at him with heartfelt gratitude. He smiled, humble and kind. "You did this yourself," he replied. "I just helped you see it through." In that moment, she realized the true value of their journey. It had been more than a passage through the mountains. It had been a lesson in trust, courage, and human kindness. And as they walked the final steps toward the village together, she knew that this experience would remain with her forever, a story of resilience, connection, and the quiet magic of the mountains. The village square was alive with color and sound. Flags fluttered gently in the breeze, music floated from a nearby gathering, and the laughter of children echoed along the cobblestone streets. The bride could hear the excited chatter of family and friends, calling out greetings and well wishes, and the air was rich with the scent of fresh flowers and baked goods. Yet even amidst the joyous chaos, she felt a quiet sense of calm. The journey up the mountain, carried by the mountain man, had left her with a sense of peace and reflection that she knew would stay with her long after the celebrations ended. As they approached the village, villagers parted to make way for the pair, offering smiles, nods, and small words of admiration. It was clear to everyone that this was not just the arrival of a bride, but the culmination of a story that had unfolded along the mountain path. The mountain man moved with effortless composure, carrying her carefully when needed, guiding her around obstacles, and walking beside her with a gentle presence that commanded respect without demanding it. Children ran ahead, pointing at the bride's single shoe and giggling softly, while elders shook their heads with knowing smiles. They had seen many weddings, but few arrivals carried such quiet drama and meaning. Every villager could feel the story of courage, trust, and kindness that had brought her here. The story of a journey that had tested both spirit and body, yet ended in triumph and connection. Finally, they reached the entrance of the square, where her family awaited. Her mother's eyes were wide with surprise and relief, her hands clasped together in gratitude. Her father, tall and sturdy, stepped forward, a mixture of pride and amazement written across his face. The bride carefully stepped down from the mountain man's steady guidance, placing her foot on the cobblestone, and looked back at him with warmth and appreciation. "You've done more than anyone could ask," she said softly, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "I will never forget this." The mountain man smiled humbly. "The path was difficult, but you were brave. I just helped a little along the way." His words were simple, yet carried the weight of truth. It was clear to the bride and to everyone watching that the journey had been shared, a collaboration of courage, trust, and human kindness. Her family welcomed her with open arms, helping her adjust her dress and smoothing out the dust from the climb. The village gathered around, offering congratulations and words of encouragement. Yet even in the midst of celebration, the bride's thoughts kept returning to the mountain man. She noticed the way he stood quietly to the side, observing the festivities without intruding, his calm presence still commanding attention. Children approached him curiously, sensing the gentle nature beneath his rugged exterior, and he responded with patience and warmth, bending slightly to their level and smiling as they asked questions about the mountains and the path he had guided her through. The music began to swell as the wedding ceremony formally commenced. The bride took a deep breath, feeling the culmination of both her journey and her preparations. Every eye was on her, yet she felt no fear. Instead, she felt a profound sense of connection to her family, to her community, and to the mountain man who had transformed her morning struggle into a story of hope and courage. She realized that the journey itself had prepared her for this moment, teaching her about trust, resilience, and the quiet beauty of shared human experience. As the ceremony proceeded, she noticed small acts of kindness all around her. Friends adjusted decorations with care, neighbors offered smiles and gentle guidance, and the mountain man remained a quiet presence, ready to assist if needed, but never overshadowing the moment. His calm energy was infectious, reminding everyone present that true strength often manifests in quiet, thoughtful ways. The bride felt a wave of gratitude, understanding that the celebration was not only about the union that awaited her, but about the network of support, care, and community that had carried her here. During a brief pause in the ceremony, the bride walked toward a small fountain at the center of the square, accompanied by the mountain man. She wanted a moment to reflect, to take in the significance of the journey she had completed. The fountain's water sparkled in the sunlight, reflecting the vibrant colors of flowers and flags around the square. The mountain man stood quietly beside her, allowing her space while offering silent support. She looked up at him and smiled, a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and quiet awe shining in her eyes. "You made today possible," she said softly, "not just by carrying me, but by showing me that the journey matters as much as the destination." He nodded, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "The path teaches us things we cannot learn anywhere else," he said. "Sometimes, the hardest moments reveal the most about who we are and what we are capable of." His words felt like a lesson, gentle yet profound, reminding her that courage and kindness often go hand in hand, and that shared journeys create lasting memories that endure far beyond the moment. The ceremony resumed, and the bride joined her family and friends, walking with confidence and joy. Every step felt lighter than before, infused with the knowledge that she had overcome a challenge with the help of someone who embodied strength, patience, and compassion. Villagers clapped and cheered as she passed, their eyes reflecting admiration for both her courage and the quiet heroism of the mountain man who had guided her through the mountains. As the wedding concluded, the celebration shifted into a lively gathering filled with music, dance, and laughter. The bride moved among her guests, sharing smiles and gratitude, but her attention often returned to the mountain man. He mingled quietly, offering a kind word or gentle smile to those who approached, yet always keeping a watchful eye to ensure she remained safe and comfortable. The contrast between his quiet demeanor and the lively energy around him made his presence even more remarkable, an anchor of calm in the midst of joyous chaos. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink, the bride found a moment to speak with him privately. They stood near the edge of the square, overlooking the village rooftops and the distant mountains that had shaped the morning's journey. The bride's eyes shone with emotion as she spoke. "I will never forget today," she said. "Not just the wedding, but the journey up the mountain, the way you carried me, guided me, and made me feel safe. I will always remember your kindness." The mountain man smiled, humble and calm. "It was your courage that made the journey possible," he said softly. "I just helped you see it through. You have strength inside you that you might not even realize." She nodded, feeling a deep sense of understanding and connection. The journey had been transformative, revealing the power of trust, the importance of compassion, and the quiet strength found in human connection. She realized that her life would always carry the memory of this day, not just as a wedding, but as a story of resilience, kindness, and shared experience that would inspire her long into the future. As evening descended, the villagers gathered for a final moment of celebration. Lanterns were lit, casting a warm, soft glow across the square. Music played, and laughter filled the air as people danced and shared stories of the day. The bride looked around, feeling gratitude for the community that had supported her and for the mountain man who had made her journey not only safe, but meaningful. In the midst of the celebration, she noticed children gathering around the mountain man, asking questions about the mountains, the path, and the journey they had witnessed. He knelt down to speak with them, sharing stories of the forest, the stones, and the lessons he had learned over the years. The bride watched, smiling softly, realizing that his kindness was contagious, inspiring others to see the world with curiosity, respect, and care. As the night settled over the village, the bride stood for a moment, reflecting on the day's events. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the trust she had placed in another person, and the lessons she had learned along the mountain path. She realized that true courage was not just about facing obstacles alone, but about knowing when to accept help, when to trust, and when to embrace the journey itself. Finally, the bride turned to the mountain man, her eyes filled with gratitude and warmth. "Thank you," she said once more, "for everything. He smiled, calm and reassuring. "The journey was ours together," he said. "Remember that." The celebration continued around them, but for a brief moment, it felt as if the world had paused, allowing the bride to hold on to the memory of the mountain, the path, and the person who had carried her not just physically, but with care, patience, and kindness. It was a moment that would remain etched in her heart forever, a reminder that even the most difficult journeys can become beautiful stories when shared with someone who truly cares. And so, under the glowing lanterns and the soft night sky, the bride embraced the memory of the journey, carrying with her the lessons of trust, courage, and the quiet magic of kindness. She knew that this day, and the mountain man who had guided her, would remain a cherished story she would share for years to come. A story of a bride, a mountain, and a journey made unforgettable by the simple, extraordinary act of care.